Good morning, Kyle and Milton, and good evening, fellow coaches. Sorry for the mix-up with the technology, but we are happy or glad that now we are on. Today, we are pleased to have Mr. Milton Williams, who is the head coach at Lyon College in Batesville. He has an extensive experience in coaching, over 30 years, field and track, strength and conditioning, football, throw, basketball. So without taking much time, I'll just welcome Mr. Milton to take us through the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, John. It's my pleasure to be here. Thank you for allowing me to speak. My topic is about speed development. The other aspect I want to talk about is the modeling aspect. And by that, I mean, what characteristics does a high-performing athlete have that allow them to run fast? And the other part of that is, can it be developed? Is this something that that we're able to obtain those characteristics? And I believe through proper training, that is the case, that you can take an athlete that's of moderate ability and increase his ability to run fast for all sports. And we'll talk about sport-specific speed. And is that really a thing or whatever? We'll get into that. Kyle, can you share that screen?
Yeah.
Okay. Now, Kyle, I'm unable to change to go to the next slide.
All right, I'm gonna do that here for you.
Okay. So
get that.
Yeah. So what I want to look at is, when you look at an athlete, what would be some key performance things, indicators that you need to look at that would enable them to perform at a high level? In other words, if we could look into his engine, what makes him run and jump, what things are we looking for? And what characteristics actually enable a guy to run fast? You know, we used to think that it was all technical, or so much of it was technical. And we believed that you know, your turnover rate was so important. A groundbreaking study that came out, probably 20 years ago, was Peter Weyand and the group at Harvard discovered that the force the athlete put into the ground was the primary determining factor for sprint speed. And that is relation for their body weight. So it's relative force. And this can be measured. Now, you can get a force plate and put it under a surface and they can run across it. And you'll find that the superior sprinters deliver more force into the ground relative to the body weight. Another way to do this is to measure their jump. So when we look at a group of sprinters or athletes or runners, you'll find in general, it's not a perfect correlation, but in general, they'll exhibit certain characteristics. One of those, for example, would be they tend to do their jumps in increments of the elite athletes in the United States. We use feet and inches, would be 10 or 11 feet, or about 3 meters 40. So for 10 bounds, they'll go about 34 meters. Or for standing triple jump, you know, they'll be a little over 11 or 11 meters. The ones that are less elite tend not to be able to jump quite as far because they do not deliver as much force into the ground. So then the question becomes, well, how do we develop this? And I believe that strength training is a key component, and we'll talk about that in just a minute. Kyle, go to, for females, you're generally looking about 35 centimeters less, or about a foot different. So in the United States, the general rule of thumb would be 9, 10, 11 feet for a male and 8, 9, 10 for a female. So you've got elite females being able to do 10 bounds of over 30 meters, around 30 meters. And we've seen that with, when I was at LSU, we had elite sprinters that could do things that were really remarkable. And, you know, their strength to body weight ratios were outstanding, and they're able to exhibit multi-throw. So all these measures, they would be able to exhibit high levels. Kyle, go to the next screen for me, if you would.
Okay.
So the jumps would be one thing that we need to look at and monitor to see if our athlete is, in other words, does he perform and look like a sprinter? The other thing, of course, is the actual running. When we talk about speed development, we're looking at something that lasts around 2 to 5 seconds. Anything longer than that, it's not speed any longer, it becomes speed endurance. So the quality we're trying to develop and what we're talking about today is actual speed. So again, we're looking at something less than 5 seconds. I like, personally, about 2 to 3 seconds of a run at the highest level you can perform at. So the things we do it, like in track and field, for example, would be acceleration, maybe 10 meters, 30, 40 yards. American football uses 40 yards, whatever your sport does. Here in America, the NBA uses a 25-yard test, which is from the other end of the court, the free throw line. So it's 3/4 court, they call it. Baseball has its own. They use 60 yards, football 40 yards. Track and field uses 30 meters. And sometimes they get a 10-meter split. So whatever your particular sport, the norm is, that's what I would use. I love using normative data. It allows you to compare against other teams, other athletes, and allows your athlete to say, oh, okay, so for me to, if I'm wanting to be a great sprinter, I need to run 30 meters under 4 seconds or whatever that would be for them. And it allows them to compare themselves against others around the world, actually. Max speed or max velocity, we kind of do the same thing. For track and field, we look at 10-meter segments. So a 10-meter fly or a 30-meter fly. 30 is very common. Or if you can't do a fly test, just do a 60-meter run, as long as they reach top velocity. By the way, I don't know what access you have to timing devices, but for all of these, actually, you need some sort of laser timer to get true accuracy. And that really is a key thing. Especially in a 10, it's hard to measure with a handheld time. And, you know, if you're looking at hundredths of a second, it's hard to measure that with just a stopwatch. So a laser timer is good. It can be done on the phone. They've got phone apps now that do allow you to get fairly accurate times on your phone. I think it's about as accurate as a laser time. For elite sprinters, they're going to cover each 10-meter segment in about 0.9 seconds. 1.0 is good. So for example, 0.9 would be a 30-meter in 2.7. That's about what a 10 flat 100-meter sprinter would run. 1.0 would be about like an 11 flat. And 1.1 would be around 12. So females, it's about a 10th slower. So 1, 1.1, and 1.2. Now, this is for sprinting. I mean, American football is slightly different. Soccer's got its data that's good for that sport. So you have to look at your sport and see what's good for your sport. But in terms of just true excellence and high levels, you're looking for male athletes. Certainly you want somebody that can cover a 10-meter fly in around a second. That would be really good. You've got an athlete that can really run well. A lot of coaches, one of the things you hear quite often is, well, you know, my athletes don't run straight ahead. My sport is more about agility and cutting and moving. I would say this, that all movement is still related to the basic quality of speed. And you can take that quality and apply it in many different ways. Agility is nothing more than broken speed changing direction. And the guy that sprints the fastest is probably going to have better agility. A lot of coaches, I think, also try to make the mistake of trying to manufacture movement that mimics their sport, which is almost impossible to do. It's almost impossible to do that. I would say this, that go ahead and develop speed. Get the fastest athlete you can on the field and allow the practice of the sport to develop those specific qualities of movement that you're looking for. A lot of coaches are also going to have a question about, well, what about longer sprinting? Or, what value is speed endurance? Well, again, it depends on your sport. If you are a shot putter, it's a 7 foot circle. So you don't have to have any speed endurance for that. For soccer, it's quite another matter. Or basketball is totally different, or tennis. So you do need some higher degree of endurance for those sports. So, but we're not talking about that today. We're still looking at developing speed. And you'll also find that I think speed is the basis of speed endurance, that all speed endurance is going to be some percentage of your max velocity. So max velocity is so crucial and so key to your performance. Kyle, go to the next screen if you would. Here's one thing I learned as a young athlete myself. As a young athlete, I never lifted weights. When I was in high school back in the 70s, we didn't have weight training. I was I'm about 1.90 meters, about 1.90 meters. And I weighed about 80 kilos back then in high school, but I was very slow. I mean, 100 meters was about 12 flat, which is not very fast. In football, we use the 40. I was about 4.9 or 5.0. I was a pretty good basketball player, but I could not dunk a basketball. But once I started lifting weights, I found that I had more athletic ability than I ever dreamed. So all of a sudden, my 40 goes from 4.9 to 4.6. My 100 meters went from 12.0 to 11.2. So it totally changed my running and jumping. I was dunking a basketball. The only thing different that I did was lift weights. Over a 2-month period, my back squat went up about 100 pounds. And it totally changed my athletic performance. So I knew then, hey, this is pretty important. If you want to get faster and improve your jumping and speed, get stronger. And what we've really learned since then, it's relative strength that matters the most. It's king. It rules the world of athletic performance, relative strength. So, but here's some general rules I think you need to look at. Strength training is not everything, okay? And my number one here says the lifting doesn't need to increase mass beyond the parameters of your chosen sport. I weigh 135 kilos right now. You will not see any soccer players that look like me. I've got too much mass. So you don't want to change their body type beyond what that sport requires or what would be beneficial. Every sport has its unique somatotype or body type that the athlete needs to look like. So for example, I've actually had sprinters that had a tremendous ability to develop large muscles, but I had to limit the amount of hypertrophy that we did, even some exercises. I've had athletes that I took off the bench press. They were getting too big for that event. Okay. So I think since relative strength is so important, that you can increase non-essential mass to a point where it's detrimental to the athlete. Number two, the lifting must not interfere with high output speed training. Fatigue is unwanted. If you carry fatigue from the weight room onto the track, even the next day or 2 days later, it's going to interfere with your speed training. And I'm going to say this, for a true speed workout, you've got to go to the field or the track 100% rested. I want 101% of your effort. For it to be true speed training, it's got to be all out. It needs to be timed. It needs to be with intent. It needs to be with focus. And a high output. That's how you get fast. 90% is not good enough. And so many coaches will have their athletes run it, hey, set, go, and they all take off in a group and they run about 90 or 95%. And that's not good enough. That's not speed training. That's just running kind of fast, but it will not make you faster. You've got to train the nervous system to fire at high output levels, and that's how you get faster. So if you're carrying fatigue from the weight room, if your weight room session's so hard that you're still sore 2 or 3 days later, or you're still fatigued, you're limiting your ability to exhibit your speed and develop it. Okay. Kyle, go back one more time. Number 3, my strength and conditioning friends may not like this, but strength training is less important as you reach the higher levels. The cost of obtaining further levels of strength can detract from the overall goal. For example, I've had 75 kilo or 73 kilo sprinters that could squat over 180, okay? And they were good sprinters. But for me to get them from 180 to 200 or 220, the cost involved there is extreme at that point. The demands on their body is very extreme. And if you're going to be a lifter, that's great. Or maybe even a shot putter. But for sprinting and speed sports, I believe that you get less and less benefit as you climb that ladder. And the cost involved is extreme at that point. The demands that a 220 kilo squat makes on your body, if you're an 80 kilo guy, is considerable compared to 180. So I just think it has to be measured out. That doesn't mean you still don't try to get stronger. I think you just need to realize that each level you go up in strength, you get less benefit from it. And we all know that there's very, very fast people that aren't strong at all. They've been given a gift. And of course, you always hear that argument too. Some coaches will say, well, Usain Bolt's not strong, or Carl Lewis wasn't strong. Well, that's true, but God gave them a gift. They would have been fast whether they ever lifted weights or not. Guys like me, I had to lift weights to reach some level of success. And I would say that most athletes will improve with general strength increasing. Just general body strength will help increase their ability to perform. Kyle, go down to the next screen, please.
Okay.
Okay, and here's just some general strength measures that I have found are pretty accurate. And you can be all over the map here. Like I said, some athletes don't even lift weights and, can break 10 seconds at 100 meters. So we know that happens. But in general, the athletes I've trained, my best sprinters have been able to power clean about 1.7 times their body weight. I had a young man that ran 100 meters for me. He was a 3-time All-American. He ended up running 10.00 at a body weight of about in kilos, about 74 kilos. He power cleaned 125 for 2 reps. So I figured he was probably about 130, 132 in his max. So that would have been in excess of 1.7. My best sprinters tend to exhibit those kind of strength levels. Females, about 1.4 to 1.5. I've seen females that weigh 55 kilos that can power clean 80. Which is over 1.5. So I've seen them do that. So that's the kind of strength levels they tend to exhibit. Now, that doesn't always hold true. This is just a general rule. Back squat. If you're a male athlete, you can only back squat 1.5 times your body weight. I think, and I believe, that there's room for improvement left on the table, that it's easy money. If you'll get to 2.0 or 2.5, I believe that gives you a greater chance to perform at a high level. especially if you don't violate the rules I said before. Don't change your body type beyond what the sport requires, and don't get too fatigued. So you have to train in a way that you can stay fresh enough to run. So I don't want it interfering with your running. Females, about 1.5 to 2. I've had some athletes that weren't very good. They were developmental athletes, but when they got their strength up, they began to do amazing things. For example, I had a young man that ran 11.1 in 100 meters. He was not very strong, but he eventually got to where he was squatting at 158 pounds over 400. So he was well over 2.5 body weight. Female, same thing. I've had a girl that was about a 57 400 meter girl. In 1 year, she improved to 53.9. She became a 2 times body weight back squat. So my next statement is strength is general at best. There's nothing specific in the weight room that always transfers to more speed. There are coaches out there, they believe that there are specific things you can do that correlates directly to sprinting or performing a sport. I don't believe that. I think you generally need to be strong. You need strong hip and leg, lower body structure that needs to be strong, or upper body, but it's not specific. I think that strength is general, but then you can apply that strength in your activity or your sport. And I think that a high degree of strength, again, relative to body weight, is important. Kyle, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Mike Stone showed me a video. I was in Colorado Springs visiting Mike Stone. Some of your coaches may know of Mike. He showed me a video of Jonathan Edwards. You know, Meg, his wife, was coaching Jonathan's at one point over in Europe, in Scotland. Jonathan Edwards was the first athlete to ever triple jump 60 feet or 1835 in meters. He showed me a video, and I think I've got this right, at a body weight of, I think 72 or 74 kilos, something like that. He power cleaned 150 kilos. He was over double body weight in the power clean. So he was basically like a human spring. His strength to body weight ratios were so unbelievable that enabled him to set the world record. And that's still, to this day, that's 25 years later, it's still unreal, unbelievable performance. My last statement is there's much better transfer at the lower levels of development than higher levels. So when Milton Williams raised his squat level up when I was a beginner, I saw immediate improvement. Now, as I improved, as I got older, I didn't see quite the transfer. So I believe that you can take young athletes and increase their general strength in the lifts that matter the most, clean, squat, front squat, anything, snatch, anything like that. And they'll get almost immediate improvement. Your more advanced athletes, it's harder to see that improvement. And I think it becomes more of a matter of neural innervation or neural recruitment and firing at that level. Excuse me. Kyle, let's go to the next slide, please. Okay, so typical workouts. So we're going to talk about the actual running here. It's real simple. My workouts are so short. I want high output. I want crazy effort, and I want them to be fully rested. If I want to work speed endurance, I'll work it, but it's going to be later. It's going to be after my speed development. So for acceleration, I'm going to run anywhere from 10 to 30 meters, typically around 20 to 30 yards or meters. I don't like to go over 30. The reason for that, if I'm doing 50 yards versus 30, I can get more reps that matter as far as technical practice at 30 meters. 50 is too fatiguing. So I like the shorter reps, but I don't like just 10. And I hear football coaches all the time, well, we play in a 10-yard box. Well, true, but don't look at how you just play. Look at how you best develop that quality. And I believe that 20 meters to 30 meters is the sweet spot. I think that allows you to get up to a good enough speed to where you're constantly accelerating through that phase, that drive phase, we call it. And I think that's the best way to develop that quality. Max velocity, which is your top end speed, is 2 to 4 reps. For acceleration, 3 to 6. The acceleration is not quite as demanding. Max velocity is a demanding session. And if you don't believe it, put a laser timer on them. And by the second or third rep, they're starting to fatigue. At that point, I cease the session. This is not about endurance for me. It's about speed. I want everything firing at that point. Now, some of the coaches may not understand what I mean by a fly. I set my timing gates up, whatever distance I'm measuring, 10 meters, 30, 15, whatever it is. 30 is very common for track. So they're 30 meters apart. I want them to be full speed between those two barriers, the two lasers. So they'll go back about 20 or 30 meters and slowly build up, slowly build, slowly build. When they get to the first gate, they should be full speed, holding full speed all the way through. And guess what, guys? That is that's it. That is it. That allows you to do everything else in sport better. Speed matters, and that's how you get there. That's how it's done. If I do 30 meters in about 3 seconds, that's my ceiling. I can't go beyond that. If somebody else does it in 2.7, he's got a much higher ceiling than me. And guess what? He can do 85% of that better than I can. His 85% is my 95%. So who's going to get tired quicker? I will. So that's how that works. So the way that quality is developed is absolute maximum velocity at whatever distance it needs to be short. I said that I prefer 2 to 3 seconds. So 30 meters is about the most I do. That's about 3 seconds. You could go a little longer, 3 to 5. Sometimes I just like to go 10 meters. What is our absolute maximum? By the way, the Russians were really the first people to come up with this back in the 60s and 70s. If y'all remember the great sprinter Valery Borzov, his coach had a table, and they looked at max velocity, acceleration, speed, endurance. And if one of the measures didn't match up with the other one, they knew that's what they needed to work on. But here's the thing. If max velocity is not there, nothing else matters. It doesn't matter what your acceleration is. It doesn't matter what your speed endurance is. You can't train to hold a speed you can't even hit. So Nykirk, the guy that just broke the 400-meter record last Olympics, he ran 43 flat, I think. He went through the first 220 flat. If you can't run 20 flat, you're never going to beat his record. So that's the idea. Now, I will say this can become sport specific. Again, as a shot putter, speed endurance wasn't an issue, and really 30-meter fly wasn't. But I'll tell you this, most great throwers, even though it's a short ring, they're still capable of pretty high efforts in speed and certainly in jumping. I don't know of a great thrower that couldn't jump very, very, very well at a high body weight. Okay, Kyle, go to the next screen. Next slide. Okay, so these are just the way you can set training up that allow you to optimally develop your speed. Borrowing from Charlie Francis, the Canadian sprint coach, what he learned to do before Charlie Francis, a lot of coaches, they tended to bleed everything together every day of the week. And everything kind of regressed to the middle. So what Charlie said, well, I think a better way to do this is to have what he called high and low days. So one day would be high demand in terms of your central nervous system. And so you see acceleration development, jumps, any kind of jumps, multi-throws with shots, strength development, all on one day. So those are all demanding, certainly for your central nervous system. Then maybe the next day, Charlie might do tempo or You could do conditioning for your sport or activity. Now, even though it can still be hard, but it's not as demanding on your central nervous system. It's a little different. So my template here would be high demand CNS, lower demand, but still conditioning. Wednesday, totally off. I like days off. I love giving my body, and I know a lot of coaches think it's an opportunity to get better, but to me, that is getting better. When you recover, I mean, that is my favorite way to recharge the body. Then the next day you come back and repeat the same thing almost, except now we're going to focus more on max velocity. Now, can you mix and match? Sure. It doesn't have to be just pure acceleration. You can do 2 30-meter starts, then you could do 3 10-meter flies. So you can mix and match in there. You can also add some conditioning on that day. You can finish off with, okay, we're going to do 2 400s or whatever. You can mix and match things. But this is the general training theme of that day. Then followed by conditioning on Friday. In the US, we tend to, in the college system, we tend to use a 5-day week. I realize that some of your teams may be wanting to train on Saturday. I like to take Sunday totally off regardless. So let me give you another way of doing it. Kyle, go to the next template, please, the next sheet. So this is just another way, again, high-low type structure with high demand on Monday, Tuesday, conditioning, which is a lower central nervous system demand. In other words, we're not firing at the same rate. It can still be fairly strenuous. But I would warn that for speed development, you have to be careful. You can condition so much that you lose capacity to develop speed. Wednesday, so we're going to change the focus, maybe more agility training and strength development on Monday, Wednesday, Friday this time. Thursday, more conditioning. Friday, back to max velocity, power, strength, all that kind of stuff. So now it's a Monday, Wednesday, Friday, whereas before it was basically 2 days. So this is 3. The template 1 was lifting and power, all that 2 days a week, which is really probably my favorite. Beginners, though, I think do better with template 2. I think beginners need a little more frequency. Beginners don't have the capacity to train at high levels. Their recovery necessity is not as great. If I've got a 13-year-old boy, he's not even fast enough to put that much demand on his body, or he's not strong enough. So he can go much more frequent. So I think they can, and I think females can handle more frequency. That's fine, Kyle. Go ahead to number 3. 3 is probably my favorite with higher level athletes. And kind of what I did at my latter part of my career at UALR. And by the way, while I was at UALR, my last year, we won the NCAA 4x100 West region. So in the West region of the United States, which a lot of great track schools, Arkansas, A&M, USC, UCLA, Oregon, all those, we beat every one of them. And largely, I only had one athlete in the United States that we called D1. Only one was offered a Division I scholarship. So I did it with developmental kids. Here's how we did it. So for us, Monday was our power speed type day, okay? Tuesday, we come in and we just lifted. We only lifted on Tuesday. Wednesday, we conditioned. So whatever conditioning we wanted to do, it was related to their event, whether it was 400. 400 is different than 100. And your sport would be different for you. If you're soccer, it'd be different. Thursday, we took off, or active recovery. Sometimes we would get in the pool and do some aqua jogging. Friday, speed development again. And then Saturday, we come in and just lift or easy conditioning. That's my favorite way to do it. I think when they get to a high level, I like kind of having a theme for the day, and that seems to work well. What I've noticed that if you do the speed development, jumps, throws, and then go to the weight room, you're looking at a 2 to 3 hour day, which is a long day for an athlete. And they've already been to class all day long, and I like breaking it up. I think they like that too. So anyway, Kyle, I guess if anybody wanted to ask questions,
I got one question here in the chat room.
Okay.
From Harrison, wanted to know, where does the count begin for the 30 meter? From the time gates, or I guess where?
The timing gates, yes.
So where does the count begin for the 30 meter?
Well, at the first gate, so you'll have two gates set up 30 meters apart.
Okay.
So, or two lasers. So you're timing only between that 30 meter segment between those two timing devices, whatever you're using to time with. And by the way, like I said, they do have apps on your phone now that do, I think they're really accurate through about 20 meters. But again, you can time a 10. A 10 is very good. I mean, I still use a 10. A lot of coaches do. So it would be between the two devices you're timing with in that 30 meter segment. And so the buildup prior to that's not timed. Only the top end, the top speed between the 30 meter segment that has the timing devices at both ends. Okay, how far from the start gate does the athlete start? A lower level athlete, it doesn't take long. So a 12-year-old girl, she can probably get the top speed in about 20 meters. So she'll build up, and at 20 meters, she's probably full speed. A 10 flat 100 meter sprinter, it's going to take longer. So they may go back 30 to 35 meters, maybe even 40, but they slowly build this. They don't blast from the start. They're not going all out. They're slowly building up. And so it's sort of an individual thing, but when they get to that, as long as they're full speed, when they get to the first timing device at the beginning of the run, the segment, that's the goal, as long as they're at full speed. Beginners tend to jog real slow, and then when they get to the barrier, then they try to hit it hard. Well, it's too late. You're not at full speed. You've got to be at full speed, I would say about 3 to 5 meters before you get there. So, and if you time it right, you're at full speed, you hit it and you go. Okay. Any other questions about what comes first, strength or skill to develop speed? I think they have to coexist at the same time, but don't make the mistake of thinking that just skill. Let me back up. Skill alone won't get you there, but neither will strength. Okay, neither one by themselves will get you there. Your technique can be so bad that no matter how strong you get, you can't express your speed. Your mechanics can be so bad that you cannot run fast. By the same token, you can be so weak that you can have perfect mechanics and you can't run fast. It does take both. So I would say you need to do a good job in all areas, but whatever technique you do have, if you get stronger, you will probably still get a little faster, but not nearly as fast as you could get if you had proper technique. Back 30 years ago, we put way too much emphasis, I think, on technique. A good friend of mine, Lauren Seagrave, made a lot of money, Kyle, on selling videotapes on technique. But I think we've since learned that the power, the strength, the relative force really, really matters. Now, Lauren understood that too, but his mission statement was decreasing ground contact times. Well, ground contact time, there's nothing technically you can do to change that. When my foot hits down on the ground, it has now become a fixed point. As I travel past it, it will lift off at the appropriate time. If it takes me one day to travel over that point, I'm going to have a long ground contact time. If I'm running 25 miles an hour and I hit down, I'm going to be off of it so fast you can't see it. So the propulsion or the force behind it prior to it, that's your ground contact. So you can't mechanically change everything. The force matters. The other thing, a lot of times we talk about staying low in your start when you accelerate. Your strength levels determine that so much. If you're weak, you can't stay low. It's impossible. If you try, you'll stumble. You overbalance. If you're extremely explosive, you can accelerate and stay real low. I had an athlete that ran the 10 flat. He also could standing triple jump about 11 meters, almost 11 meters. That's far. That's really far. But he came out. I never saw him get out start. He could stay so low, you could not believe it. A young female, they're so weak that they cannot hit those positions. So strength enables you to hit positions that you cannot hit if you're weak. Same thing with like the throws in my event. If you know, a coach sometimes forces an athlete to do something his body just will not allow him to do because he's not strong enough. So strength can help your mechanics and your technique. Any questions? I hope I answered that. Can doing short sprints improve speed in all the sports? And what is the rationale? If it's a speed power sport, short sprints can improve all sports. Now, here in the United States, our big sports are baseball, football, basketball, soccer. Yes, short sprints will definitely improve that. The only thing where if you are a long distance runner, it's not as important. It's still important though. Short sprints still increase your ability to run efficiently, okay? Even for a distance runner. So I know a lot of our Kenyan athletes do a lot of short hill sprints. They'll do it once a week. I used to coach a young man whose brother held the world record in steeplechase. Every Monday morning, he was doing hill sprints, about 40 to 60 meter hill sprints. So yes, it can, even for really long distance runners. But the rationale is this, that whatever sport you play, you're going to be operating, even if it's an endurance sport, such as soccer, you're still going to be operating at some percentage of max velocity, okay? Now, certainly in soccer, for example, you've got to be in tremendous aerobic and anaerobic condition. You have to be. But by the same token, you don't get to kick the ball unless you get to the ball first, okay? And one of the primary indicators of success in soccer is, not surprisingly, vertical jump. Well, what does vertical jump tell us? It's just like I was talking about earlier. It's an indicator of your power. That tells me you can probably accelerate, and there's a high correlation, I think about 0.84, between your ability to accelerate and your vertical jump. So yeah, acceleration is huge in soccer, even though we consider that to, they run some 10 kilometers sometimes in a game, but speed still matters. And those guys are very fast. They're very, very quick. So don't make the mistake of thinking, well, my sport involves a lot more long running. Speed still matters, and it's still important. Any more questions?
Milt, I see some up here. John asked, how does strong core influence speed in all sports?
Well, I mean, it's obviously crucial. I think a lot of the things that we do in the weight room are when you sprint, when you jump, you're doing throws, the lifting you do. That's some of the best core training you can do. Now, having said that, it's not something we leave alone, but I don't focus on it that much because we're getting so much core development. I've noticed that guys that are able to squat heavy and do heavy cleans, they tend to have really strong core, whatever movement you like to do. When I was competing, I liked what we called the Russian twist, where I'd hang off the end of a bench and hold a 45 and twist over all the way back and forth. It takes a high degree of strength to do that. That's what I like for throwers. For sprinters, we just do weighted sit-ups. It's real simple. What I don't like are the thousands and thousands of reps that are just meaningless. I call it washing dishes. You're just going through motions. I see athletes, they sit back and they twist back and forth. That's not really developing core strength. If I'm going to develop strength, that's what I'm going to do. I'm not going to just go through a bunch of useless motion. So I don't believe in doing thousands or hundreds of reps for nothing. I like to do it weighted. That's my preference. My sprinters at UALR, we would have somebody hold their feet. It's real simple. And they put a weight behind their head or cross in front of their chest and do sit-ups. And I had athletes that could put 20-kilo plate behind their head and knock out 10 reps pretty easy. I don't know if I said 10 or 20. They'd hold a 20-kilo plate. I don't know which I said, but a 20-kilo bumper plate, put it behind their head and be able to do sit-ups, fairly, they could knock out 10. The beginners couldn't, my strong athletes could. But that's primarily what we did. And then, we'd always, on our conditioning days, we did a lot of tempo runs. Part of our warm-up and cool-down involved some lighter core development, but again, not extreme numbers. I personally don't believe in that. Some athletes try to do 1,000 reps a day or whatever. I personally do not believe in that.
Milt, there's a question here from Harrison that says, where does a player like LeBron James lie for a higher level athlete with speed and strength?
I would say this. I don't really know what his strength levels are, but you can tell by looking at his body and the way he can jump and some of the things he can do that he does have a high level of, he's able to perform at a very high level. He's a physical presence on the floor. There's no question. So I would have to rate him really high. I would think that he's one of the more a physical talent in the NBA, one of the most physical guys in the NBA. Now, what he actually does in the weight room, I have no knowledge of that. I will say this: when I was at LSU, I was the LSU basketball strength coach for a while, and had some really good teams. We had a lot of first-round draft picks. Even some of the guys that you wouldn't think would be strong were still. I mean, we had quite a few, 140 kilogram power cleaners. We had guys that could bench press, 140 to 150 even. So we had some pretty strong guys. Kyle, you remember Ricky Blanton? He was a strong player. Shaquille O'Neal, I coached Shaq. Shaq could power clean about 135, 137. So he was pretty strong, but Shaq didn't like to squat. He begged me to not squat, so I let him do leg press. Guess what? It didn't matter. He was still a great player. So I do believe this, that I think you have to be careful. I used to believe that all athletes need to squat, period. I don't necessarily believe that anymore. I like to see it, but I think Shaq was strong enough for the demands of his game, and I think he proved that in the NBA. A documentary just came out about a kid we had named Chris Jackson, who went on to be a first-round draft pick, a tremendous young athlete. He became Mahmoud Abdul-Rauf in the NBA. He changed to Muslim. But his freshman year at LSU, he was second in the country in scoring. He averaged 30.2 points a game. But what I didn't realize, I saw some old video of him on the documentary from high school. Kyle, he couldn't have weighed 70 kilos even, probably less, probably 65 kilos. I don't know, he's light. But a little old skinny kid in junior high school, and he's slam dunking that basketball. And I thought, wow, I had him 2 or 3 years. And I thought, what did I really do for him? He probably didn't even need me, And he made this observation, Kyle. By the way, he was very strong. He squatted 365. So what is that? 160 kilos, really. He is a 165. He squatted about 165, weighing about 75 kilos. So he was very strong. But he made this observation when he went to the pros, when he knew he was going to go out early in the draft and get drafted. People told him, you need to develop an NBA body. So he went from 165 to 180, or from 75 kilos to what is that, Kyle? 82.5.
Yeah.
He said it was the biggest mistake he ever made. He lost his quickness. And that's what I refer to. He went outside the demands, or his body changed so much, he lost some quickness. He really did. He lost some ability. So I think you have to be really careful about, you know, what's the optimal body type for your sport, for you. What's best for me is not what's best for some other athlete, maybe. So Kyle, you still with me?
I'm here.
Okay. I hope that answers that question. About LeBron, LeBron's a freak athlete, and absolutely. I don't know exactly what role weight training has. I know he does lift. I don't think he would lift the way Kyle would train him. I think Kyle would train him differently, but I don't know that that would be the best for him. I don't know that. I think at that level, you have to take things, every athlete is unique, and I think you have to be careful. I think there's some generalities, but like Shaq, that I did not make squat. I think I did the right thing. I didn't make him do that, and I think that was the right decision.
John has asked, how can you improve speed of thought?
You know what? It's funny you said that. We've been having that discussion here where I work. I work at a high school now here in beautiful Hot Springs, Arkansas. If you're ever in the United States, come visit me. It's beautiful here. But, you know, sometimes you just don't see the game very quickly. Some athletes process faster than others. I don't know. I don't know the answer to that. Very honestly, I don't. I don't think that some athletes will ever see it as fast as others, you know. I think that's maybe a little more God-given. Maybe perhaps seeing it at a younger age, maybe. I don't know the answer to that. If you find out, let us all know, because we're all interested in that answer.
John, are you there?
I'm here. Probably this could go to you. Is there a relationship between when you train on speed, does it affect your motor neurons? And by that extension, does it go to, you know, like your thinking style?
I don't know about
or
thinking,
speed?
but I do think that speed training can innervate your neural system. Now, whether it goes into the dendrites in your brain and all, I don't know. I mean, I don't know if it actually makes its way to your brain, but I do believe that it does affect. I think it raises all boats in terms of increasing your nervous system ability to fire and to react. Now, I don't know as far as any other capacity other than that, but I do believe that speed training is crucial. Some coaches are of the opinion that, you know, if you never run over 10 yards, what would be the advantage of doing a 30-meter fly? I think that a 30-meter fly potentiates the ability, even in a 10. I think you are operating at such a higher level in terms of your neuromuscular abilities that it does potentiate your short sprints as well, and agility.
All right, Kyle, does the same principle affect weightlifting? The speed training for speed in weightlifting?
Say that again, John.
The same principles Milton has talked about. Does it affect training speed in weightlifting too?
Speed training affect weightlifting?
Like short runs, jumps. Could that also be applied to increasing your speed in weightlifting?
I think it's along the same lines Milton talked about. I think, Milton, correct me if I'm wrong, but it's like if there's efficiency there or something, it might help. Maybe it might not help all athletes, all weightlifting athletes, to do some speed training, but it might help certain athletes that may have deficiencies that need to be amended.
Kyle, you know, if you'll think back, a lot of the old Russian athletes used to do a lot of sprints and jumps. Yeah. You don't see that as much anymore, I don't think. But back in the 60s and 70s, you used to see that a lot, where they did quite a bit of short sprints and jumps and things of that nature, you know. A lot of the Polish athletes, they would do that. And I don't know if you see it as much. I know some coaches like to finish up a session with some sort of plyometric activity. That's not uncommon. I think if you do it wrong, that running can negatively affect your lifting. If you're not careful, I mean, you can hurt yourself. If you're tight and you're trying to force a running session, I think you can injure yourself. So I think you need to be careful. Yeah. If your primary activity is Olympic lifting or weightlifting, I think you have to be careful. I think that the running then becomes secondary to your weightlifting, in my opinion.
Right. I agree.
Mm-hmm. So anyone with any more questions or any question? Yeah.
Coaches, it was my pleasure. I enjoyed this. I hope it was helpful. I hope it was of some use to you. Yeah. We can get a copy. I think, Kyle, you got an email. We can send out emails to John.
Yes.
Kyle can do that, I think.
Share it, yeah.
Yeah, he can share it with you.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I have to go to work.
Oh.
It is 7:30. I've got to get to work. Thank you so much, guys. I really enjoyed this, and it was my pleasure to do this.
Yeah, it's our pleasure too. We thank you so much for creating time for us and sharing your knowledge. This is very important, and I believe coaches have gotten something out of this. And I hope we'll have more such sessions in the future when you find time. Sorry for
I'd love to
engaging you very early in the morning before you go to work.
No, that's fine.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
See you, Kyle.
Take care.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Milt. Thank you, John. All right.
Right.